John Lusk here of Lusk Archery Adventures. Serious testing, successful hunting. Well, I'm ready for my first Broadhead test of 2023. Whew, finally, okay, it's the beginning of March and I finally got everything all set up and I've started doing the testing and I'm going after the first one here today. And I've been wanting to test this head for a while, and so I broke down and ordered some because I'm just curious to see how they perform. But it's the Ramcat Cage Ripper, okay, by Ramcat Broadheads. You gotta love that name, Cage Ripper, okay? So it's a rear deploying mechanical head with some really unique features. We're gonna zoom on in here in just a minute and go through some of the design features and specifications, and then I'm gonna put it to the test. And for my tests, I'm using my regimen for 2023. You can watch the video that I just recently produced that goes through all the descriptions of each of the tests and why I do them, or you can read about them in the description box right below each of the videos that I have. I go into detail and describe the process and give the scores for each of the tests that I do on that. And for these tests, I'm using my Bowtech CP28, almost said SR6, okay? But I'm using my Bowtech CP28 set at 72 pounds, and I'm using Bishop FOC King arrows for most of the shooting, but the really hard impact shots, I'm using the Bishop Fad Eliminators. All right, let's check out this Ramcat Cage Ripper. Here's a good look at the Cage Ripper close up, and it's got a lot of stuff going on here, so let me try to break it down. First of all, the materials. The body here is aluminum, the ferrule. It's a 7075 T6 aluminum, and I believe that's the case with the tip as well. I think it's an aluminum tip. I put a magnet to it, and it doesn't seem to conduct at all, so I think it's a aluminum ferrule and an aluminum tip, and it feels like it's got a little bit of wiggle to it. And then it's got 420 stainless steel blades that are 0.032 inches thick. And the way it works here is it takes just 2 pounds of pressure at impact on the head for the blades to deploy. And there's a spring, an internal spring mechanism, that when this tip, like a piston, is pushed down on impact, it causes those blades to really spring forward fast. And then they're held in a locked position. So they lock open at their full cutting diameter of 2 inches. So that's really nice. There's not a lot of mechanical blades that lock open in their full position like that, but it's not considered barbed because you can pull them out back that way. And this is the reason, this blade deployment is the reason there's kind of these serrations on the tip. That's just to make sure that you're grabbing enough tissue, getting enough resistance there to be able to drive that blade mechanism, or that deploying mechanism, to open. And you'll notice also that kind of the famous scoop that Ramcats use to aid in their flight. They got these little scoops on the 3 sides so the air can just flow straight back as well as to the sides while it's rotating, and that just helps them to be a little bit more forgiving in flight. And then to close them, in case you are wondering how to close them, you just pull the head open like that, and there's this little pin that's kind of hard, doesn't stick out much. You got to kind of squeeze it, get it back, and then the blades, whoops, I'll let go. And then the blades just close like that. There we go. And there it is in the closed position. So you don't have any O-rings or clips or anything like that to worry about. So really eager to see how this head's going to hold up. I'm a little suspect with this aluminum tip here and such a large aluminum body, but it is 7075, which is stronger than some steels, and really intriguing design. Eager to see how it performs. Really good flight. Looks like the vanes are almost touching down there. 250, which is a 9.5 on a 10-point scale. It penetrated 8 1/4 inches. And here you can see the Cage Ripper's opening hole. It opened very well on impact, the full 2 inches of cut. However, by the time it hit the gel, the blades had already closed. And so for the remainder of the gel, they stayed in the closed position, and hence the extra deep penetration. 300. So it took an extra 50 grams of force to cut through the wire, and that plus 50 translates into a 9 on a 10-point scale. It penetrated through 61 layers, which is really good on the one hand. However, the blades didn't really open the whole way. The biggest they got was a 1-inch cut, but for the vast majority of the layers, they were in the same closed position. So again, on the good side, it penetrated deeply. On the bad side, it penetrated deeply because you're not getting very much cut. It held together really well through those 3 shots in the MDF. The only downside is that the blades are locked open. I can't get the tip to move in the position, from the position that it's in. And so I fear that internal mechanism got damaged in some way. Here it is after 2 shots into the steel plate, and you can see the blades got a bit bent there, and the tip got pretty blunted. Okay, that aluminum tip kind of took a beating, but the internal mechanism that causes the blade deployment and the lock, that no longer works at all. Before, the blades were locked open. Now they just kind of swing freely. There's no lock or no close to them at all. Now you can see the holes in the steel plate. It makes a decent round hole, and then you just see the slits, and of course the smaller cut from the second one where the blades just collapsed. On the concrete, it just could not handle that kind of a hard impact. This aluminum ferrule, with that venting, it just kind of mushroomed, opened up, and the blades fell out. I found one of the blades, and one of the other blades, I don't know where it is, somewhere in my backyard, and that's where I'm glad I'm not doing it in my basement like I did in Iowa. But you don't want to walk in my backyard with bare feet for a while. But anyway, this had held together pretty well through most of the durability tests, but just couldn't handle that 0 penetration test. So let's think of the Cage Ripper. You know, it did better than I thought, okay? I was just expecting it was going to fall apart from the get-go, but it definitely did better than I thought. You know, I like the way the blades deploy. I like the design of them locking open. I like the piston-driven system. There's a lot that I like about it. It flew very well, and you know, you can see the test scores and see how it did in each of the areas. Not a huge fan of the tip being aluminum like it is. It's not super durable in a really hard impact shot like that. And the overall durability, you know, it's pretty good for a mechanical, but you know, that's just definitely something to consider. One of the biggest challenges is with a head like this is testing the deployment, okay? And you know, it did deploy. I mean, the blades fully opened on the surfaces that I tested, but then like with the mediums that I use, they kind of shrunk back down. They opened and then they closed up, and they didn't ever like reach their locked position and stay locked. And so that happened in the cardboard, that it penetrated really well, but the blades really were just, I mean, it was a very small cut the whole way through all the layers of cardboard. And the same in the gel, it just shrunk down to this position after the initial impact in the MDF. So I had to dock it a bit in those areas, but I'm not saying that would necessarily happen on an animal, okay? And I can't simulate the hide and the cavity inside of an animal and so forth. And I imagine that it's not going to be as big of a problem in those instances, but it is just something worth noting that at least in the mediums I'm using, which is not abnormal for other mechanicals as well. Other gator style heads sometimes have that same issue, that the blades weren't staying fully deployed like that. But overall, a decent head and worth checking out. So you check out the score sheet and see how it performed in the areas that matter to you the most, and see if the Cage Ripper might be a good fit for you.